Welcome back everyone to part 2 of our video. In the last video, we talked about green dot and red dots and we went over our activity, which were warning signs or specific behaviors that you could notice that could lead to sexual assault, dating, domestic violence, or bullying. Some of these signs that we talked about include obvious injuries, maybe some marks, someone's making excuses for these things, or they're wearing clothing that's inappropriate for the season, uncharacteristic absences, or they're late for work or school, isolation and withdrawal, emotional distress, depression and anxiety, or pulling away from someone and avoiding them. These are all common warning signs that we talked about. It would be nice if a catchy campaign like "Go do green dots" could just magically make everyone start intervening. But the reality is it can be hard to do green dots when you see a red dot, even when you want to. This is true for everyone. People often don't intervene because of barriers. Let's focus on 2 types of barriers that can impact all of us. There's personal barriers, for instance, being introverted, being afraid of a physical escalation or retaliation. Maybe we don't like conflict. Maybe we are feeling unsure or not wanting to make a scene or embarrass ourselves. The second type of barrier is a relationship or social barrier. For instance, not wanting to break an unspoken rule in your group, being perceived as a squeaky wheel or a snitch, or feeling uncomfortable confronting a friend. No matter what your barriers are, we know that they're not going to just disappear. Whatever barriers you have now, you'll still have at the end of this workshop. So we want you to think about green dots that would be realistic for you, even with your barriers. And these barriers might look different for everybody, and they might change depending on the situation or context that we're in. So how can we intervene despite our barrier? When you see a concerning behavior, there's something you can do called a reactive green dot. This is the green dot you do in reaction to seeing something already in progress. It's important to know you have options to intervene even if you're hitting up against one of your barriers. To help you think about some ideas, remember the 3 Ds: direct, delegate, and distract. Direct is doing something yourself by either directly intervening with the person who is causing the harm or the person experiencing the harm. Could be asking someone to stop what they're doing or check in on someone you might be worried about. Delegate is when we ask someone else to get involved. We can ask the friends of either person who's involved to help. We could talk to a trusted coach, teacher, or trusted peer. We could ask a family member to check in. We could leave an anonymous note for the counselor or school resource officer. Another option that we have is to distract. So we think of a distraction that will diffuse the situation or calm things down in the moment. A distraction might be accidentally spilling a drink like our Zip Fizz, asking to borrow the phone of someone who's maybe in a risky situation, asking for a ride, or starting an unrelated conversation. It doesn't matter which green dot you do. The most important thing is that you think of green dots that feel realistic to you in the moment. And we may use a combination of these different 3 Ds. So we may delegate and distract, or we may directly intervene and delegate. So we can use a combination just depending on what we feel more comfortable with. It is important to acknowledge our safety in these situations. So it's important not to directly intervene if there is a higher level of severe violence, use of a weapon. We think it might be dangerous to get involved. We don't want anyone to get in any harm's way. So let's do another activity together. I'm going to read a scenario, and after I finish, I want you to pause the video and think of some ways that you could intervene. Try to think of reactive green dots using all of the 3 Ds. direct, delegate, and distract. The first scenario is at a party, someone looks really drunk as they're being led to a bedroom away from the group. Go ahead and pause this video and think of a few ways we could intervene, either directly, by delegating, or distracting. So be specific. Let's review. So, 1, you're at a party and someone looks really drunk as they're being led to a bedroom away from the group. We have a few options. We could distract. So you could tell the person that you heard that a neighbor had called the cops and ask if they could give you a ride home because you want to get out of there. You could directly intervene by asking the person what they're doing, the person who's causing the harm, or leading the other person away. You could directly intervene with the person who's intoxicated by going up and saying that you want to talk to them in private. You could delegate. So maybe if we aren't super comfortable with the situation or we don't know either person really well, we could delegate by telling one of their friends to go and talk to them or suggest to step in, that they go get them out of the situation. Number 2, you're walking to class when you notice someone shove another student into their locker. Pause this video and think of some ways you might be able to intervene. We have a few options. We could cause a distraction by dropping a textbook in the hallway. We could directly intervene by telling the person that they need to go cool off for a minute. We could directly intervene by checking in with the person who was shoved into the locker. We could also delegate by telling a teacher, a school resource officer, or a counselor about what happened. Number 3, you notice a couple in a parking lot arguing loudly. He grabbed his girlfriend by the arm aggressively, and you're getting concerned about the rapid escalation. Go ahead and pause this video and think of some ways that you could directly intervene. All right, you have a few options. You could directly get involved by approaching them and tell them that what they're doing is not okay. You could directly get involved by checking in with the girlfriend. You could delegate to security, a student resource officer, or law enforcement. You could distract by approaching them and asking them for directions somewhere, or causing the distraction by saying that you lost your dog and you want to know if they've seen that dog. You could cause a distraction by honking your horn or setting off your car alarm. Number 4, a close friend of yours is obsessed with their ex. They are calling, texting, and following them all the time, even though the ex has made it clear the relationship is over. Go ahead and pause this video and think of some ways you can intervene. Great. So we have some options. We could directly get involved by talking to our friend and saying hey, I think this relationship's over and they just don't seem that interested anymore. We could also directly intervene if we know the ex and tell them just to block our friend. We could delegate to a trusted adult or a teacher or a counselor. We could cause a distraction by saying hey, let's just go to the mall or take a walk along the lake, and coming up with some other things that they could do. You did a great job of coming up with a ton of options for each of these scenarios. There isn't one way to intervene, and we can choose the option that feels most comfortable to us. There's a second type of green dot called proactive green dots. Proactive green dots are things we could do to begin stopping red dots before they even start. They begin to reset norms and make it clear that sexual assault, dating, violence, and bullying are not okay, and everyone is expected to do their part. Here's how it works. Think back to the image of our school spaces. You'll notice the red dots and the reactive green dots that were done in response. If you look again, you'll notice the majority of the space was actually blank. But now we can fill this space up with proactive green dots. These proactive green dots are the norms that are clearly established that violence is not okay and everyone is expected to do their part. The result is that less people experience sexual assault, dating violence, and bullying, and that our messages are clear that these things are not okay and everyone's expected to do their part. Here are some proactive things that you can do. You can post a link on social media to a bystander intervention story or video you found. Like, share, or comment on a similar post you see from a friend. You can have a conversation or text exchange with your friends, teammates, or classmates about how they can do green dots, or how important this issue is to you, or what you plan to do as your contribution. You can retell a green dot story you heard about a friend who intervened, spoke up, or got someone home from a party safely. You can smile and nod or say, "That was a good thing you did," when you see someone else step up. You can participate in a class discussion about this issue or related issues to you. If you have a research paper or a senior project, you can do those research papers and projects on bystander intervention and prevention. And we can spread this message simply by being role models and showing that these things are important to us. When everyone chooses to step in and to spread the message that these matters are important to us, that's when we can really see culture starting to change. There are so many ways we can proactively contribute to a solution in our schools and communities. I don't know how many green dots it's going to take to begin to shift our culture, but between reactive green dots, the 3Ds, and proactive green dots, no matter who you are or what makes it difficult, there are ways that you can be part of it. The important thing is not necessarily what you do, but that you do something. Be realistic about what you will and will not do, and spend some time thinking about options that you can see yourself doing. Just like each individual choice to like, post, or share added up to something bigger, our green dot choices can add up to something bigger too. The goal is simply to ensure that the number of people hurt by sexual assault, bullying, or domestic violence on our school goes down. No one has to do everything, but everyone has to do something. Take 30 seconds to consider a proactive green dot you will do by the end of this week. We make it easy. If you follow us on Instagram, then we post bystander tips. Some other resources you might have is our safe passage. We're more than happy to talk about anyone's experiences that they might be going through or concerns about a friend. You also have other resources like trusted adults, teachers, counselors, student resource officer, or law enforcement. Sometimes people share stuff with us after the fact, and there's still some ways we can support them. We can believe them and listen without judgment, say, "I'm sorry," or "It's not your fault." Help them find resources and ask, "How can I support you?" Here's our contact information, including our 24/7 hotline and our student safety email and our Instagram. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day.